Okay, we are reading the book, the Gospel of John, the Gospel according to John, in the New Testament of the Christian Bible. We are on chapter 5, and Jesus has just been talking to the multitudes on the side of the Galilee River, or Galilee River, the Sea of Galilee. And the disciples have jumped into a boat and are heading off to Capernaum. And Jesus doesn't get in the boat with them, and that's where we pick up. Well, we start up. Actually, I jumped ahead of myself. We're going to have lunch first here. So after this, Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee, that is, to Tiberias, and a great crowd was following him, for they saw the miracles that he had worked for the sick, excuse me. And Jesus went up onto the mountain and sat there with his disciples. And the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. So Jesus lifted up his eyes and saw that a great crowd had come to him. And he said to Philip, Philip, where shall we buy bread so that these people can eat? He said this to test him, for he knew what he was going to do. And Philip answered, Wow, 200 denarii worth of bread is not enough for everyone to have a little bit. Andrew, the brother of Simon, and one of the disciples said to him, There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 little fish. What is that for all these people, though? Jesus said, Have the people take their places on the ground. There was plenty of grass in that place, so the men took their places to the number of 5,000. So 5,000 people. Then Jesus took the loaves and gave thanks and passed them out to the people who were lying there, and so too with the fish, as much as they wanted. And when they were filled, he said to his disciples, Gather up all of the broken pieces that are left over, so that nothing will be wasted. So they gathered up and filled 12 baskets from what was left of the 5 barley loaves after the people had eaten. When the people saw what miracles he had done, they said, Truly, this is the prophet who is coming into the world. Jesus, realizing that they were going to come and carry him off to make him king, withdrew back up the mountain all by himself. When night came, his disciples went down to the sea, and, embarking on a ship, they began to cross over the sea to Capernaum. And now it was dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them, and the sea was rough from a great wind blowing. When they had rowed about 25 or 30 furlongs, which is about 3 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and coming close to the ship, and they were frightened. But he said to them, It is I, don't be afraid. They wanted to take him aboard the ship, but immediately it was at the shore for which they were sailing toward. So it looks like maybe there was an instantaneous, another little slipped in miracle there, where they were going to take Jesus on board and all of a sudden they were at port. So he didn't need to get on board. He just walked onto the shore, I guess. The next day, the crowd that was standing on the other side of the sea had seen that there had been no other ship there except for one, and that Jesus had not gone aboard that ship with his disciples, but the disciples had gone away without him. But ships from Tiberias arrived near the place where they had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. So when the crowd saw that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they themselves boarded the ships and went to Capernaum in search of Jesus. And when they found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, Master, when did you reach here? Jesus answered them and said, Truly, truly I tell you, you look for me not because you saw signs, but because you ate the loaves and were fed. Try to earn not the food that perishes, but the food that remains into life everlasting, which the Son of Man will give you. For God the Father set his seal upon him. All right, so he's telling us the same thing that Thakur tells us all the time. Don't look to the world of changing things where everything expires for your food, for the things that fulfill you and sustain you. He says, go to take from the Lord that which will never end. You know, like when Ramakrishna tells that woman, tell your husband, if he comes here, I'll give him that alcohol that will, with an intoxication that will never end. right? So that is the main distinction between things that are real and things that are unreal. Things that are unreal are never what they are. They're constantly in a state of change, and so everything expires. And you are an immortal being, right? So you are going to remain the same forever. So these things from the material world, from the manifested world, they're not for you. They will not fulfill you. It's a different type of food. It's not a food for you. Your food comes directly from the hand of the beloved, is what he's saying here. So try to earn not the food that perishes, but the food that remains, that's into eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For God the Father set his seal upon him. Right? So he's the one, the incarnation, that's his whole point, is to show us the way to this eternity, to the way to this freedom, to have to what to eat, as it were, that would keep us fulfilled forever, make us content forever. They said to him, "What shall we do to do the work of God?" Jesus answered and said to them, "This is the work of God, to believe in the one he sent," right? To have faith in the avatar. Then they said to him, "What sign are you accomplishing for us to see and believe you?" Because walking on the sea wasn't enough, and feeding 5,000 people with two pieces of, of fish and five barley loaves, that wasn't enough. Show us something more. We still don't believe you. What sign are you accomplishing for us to see and believe you? What work are you doing? Our fathers ate the manna in the desert, as it is written, right? So that's that when the Jews were spending 40 years walking in a great big circle in the desert, God began feeding them after they ran out of all kinds of food. He began feeding them with manna, literally a type of bread, as it seemed, that would rain down from heaven during the night and would be available for them to gather up in baskets the next morning. And each man, no matter how much they gathered, would only have enough for the day, which was an interesting thing about that. So this is how God fed them while they were wandering in the desert for 40 years. So they want to know, what are you going to do for us? Our fathers ate the manna in the desert, as it was written. He gave them bread from heaven to eat. Then Jesus said to them, "Truly, truly, I tell you, it was not Moses who gave you bread from heaven, but my Father who gives you that true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is what comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." Then they said to him, "Lord, give us always this bread." Jesus said to them, "I am the bread of life. He who comes to me will not be hungry, and he who believes in me will not be thirsty, ever. But I have said to you that you have seen, but do not believe. All that my Father gives me will come to me, and one who comes to me I will not drive out, because I have come down from heaven not to do my own will, but to do the will of him who sent me. And this is the will of him who sent me, that I should lose nothing of all he gave me, but raise it up again on the last day. For this is the will of my Father, that everyone who sees the Son and believes in him should have life everlasting, and I shall raise him up on the last day. Now, this is interesting here. I haven't really paid attention to this before. So Jesus is it's the word, the message, the freedom that he preaches. Just as he has come every time as an avatar, he preaches those teachings that give us this immortality. Come to me for the immortality. Come to me for that which will last, that which will not leave you hungry. But he says here, "And this is the will of him who sent me." And this is an interesting thing, that I should lose nothing of all that he gave me, but raise it up on the last day. So his goal was that nothing should be lost, right? That everyone should be pulled in and raised up again on the last day. For this is the will of my Father, right? That none be lost, that everyone gets raised up. That everyone who sees the Son and believes in him shall have life everlasting, and I shall raise him up on the last day. Now, the Jews murmured about him, because he had said, "I am the bread which came down from heaven." And they said, "Is this not Jesus, the son of Joseph? whose father and mother we know? How is it that he now says, I have come down from heaven? Jesus answered and said to them, Do not murmur among yourselves. No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me pulls him, and I will raise him up on the last day. It is written in the prophets, and they shall all be taught from God. Everyone who has listened and learned from the Father comes to me, not because anyone has seen the Father, except for the one who is beside God. He has seen the Father. Truly I tell you, he who believes has life everlasting. I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate the manna in the desert and died. This is the bread which comes down from heaven, so that one may eat of it and not die. I am the bread which lives, which came down from heaven. If one eats of this bread, he will live forever, and the bread I will give, for the sake of the life of the world, is my flesh. The Jews quarreled with each other, saying, How can this man give us his flesh to eat? Jesus said to them, Truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood has life everlasting, and I will raise him up on the last day. For my flesh is the true food, and my body is the true drink. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood stays in me, and I in him, as the living Father sent me, and I live through the Father, so he who eats me will also live through me. This is the bread which came down from heaven, not as our fathers ate and died, but he who eats this bread will live forever. Right? And so he was saying earlier that he gives the bread of heaven, with his teachings. And whoever believes these teachings, trusts in them, and listens to them, and lives accordingly, will get this life everlasting, right? And that the Lord sent him that he might not lose anyone, that everyone might come, that everyone, who takes heed and practices is going to be on the bus. All of this he said as he taught in the synagogue in Capernaum. Then many of his disciples, hearing him, said, This is a hard saying. Who can listen to it? And Jesus knew in his heart that his disciples were murmuring about this. And he said to them, Is this too difficult for you? What if you were to see the Son of Man going up to where he was before? It is the Spirit that makes life. The flesh is no help. The words I have spoken to you are spirit and life. But there are some of you who do not believe. For Jesus knew from the beginning who were the ones who did not believe and who was the one who would betray him. And he said, This is why I told you that no one can come to me unless it is given him by the Father. Because of this, many of his disciples left him thenceforth and no longer went about with him. So Jesus said to the 12, You do not wish to go away? Simon Peter answered him, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of everlasting life, right? So there's how we know this is words. This is a message, a teaching. You have the words of everlasting life, and we have believed, and we know that you are the Holy One of God. Jesus answered them, Did I not choose you 12, and one of you is an enemy? He meant Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, for he, one of the 12, was going to betray him. All right. Any questions so far?
Swami, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is this all happened after he was crucified and rose, or
No,
before? It was
this is all before.
okay.
Yes, at the end of the book, we'll see the crucifixion.
Okay.
All four of the Gospels have the story of the crucifixion at the end.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you ever get any what I always wondered about the eating the flesh and drinking the blood part. I know it might be probably symbolic, but help.
Well, it's prasad, it's like prasad. I mean, anything that offered, any food that was offered in the temples, everybody would take and eat that food, and it was a blessing to them. And so when Jesus is the sacrifice, partaking of him, of course, in a ritualistic manner, not because there's no other way it could be. We're not- I, I was in the freezer this morning. There was no Jesus meat in there. So, uh, so clearly it's ritualistic. And it's prasad. It's prasad. He offered himself and he offered all of his teachings. He offered his words to us. It's up to us to imbibe them, to take them in, to make them a part of us. Now, of course, this is going to draw lines to the ritual of the Lord's Supper that they do, that they do in memory of him. But again, that's just a ritual to mark the sacrifice. The power of the sacrifice is you taking part in it by hearing the words, putting them into practice, imbibing them, making them a part of you. And from that, you find your eternal life. From that, you find your salvation from this delusion that we're in, this crazy whirlwind of
Well, I mean,
nonsense.
it's always intrigued me, though, that, this very thing, even amongst the Christians, they argue about these points with the bread and the wine. And it strikes me so much that, the thing with the Christians is taking it so literally
Mhm.
versus symbolically. I mean, he himself, I mean, the Lord himself says, do you take offense at this? It is the spirit that gives life. The flesh is of no avail. And yet he's saying this bread is my flesh, this is my body, this is my blood that you drink. And unless you drink this blood and this. And so, of course, they developed the Eucharist, which is, of course, the offering of the bread and the wine. And it becomes very sacramental and it's beautiful. But I always wondered why, it is that this is taken ever always so literally when I'm not so sure that Jesus meant it, like black and white. Yeah, take the bread and the wine. I think he was meaning that spirit of me and the. Does that make sense?
Well, yes. Well, what you have to do is if you go back and read the book of Exodus in the Old Testament, you'll
Hmm.
see that any time that God does something for the children of Israel, that he has them do an annual celebration or ritual that would remind them of that time that he saved them from this, or that he delivered them from that, or that he gave them this or whatnot like that. So if you read in the Exodus, you'll see that it's sort of part of the Jewish tradition that anytime God acts in a profound way, he establishes a holiday with a ritual that you are supposed to repeat every year after that in order to remember what God has done for you, to build that grace. And so Jesus is Jewish, and God has given them a great thing and has delivered them from their egoism. And so, just like in the Old Testament, whenever God did something good, he gives them a ritual and tells them to repeat that ritual in order to not forget what God has done for them. And so I don't think this is any different than that. It's just part of their tradition. Anytime that God would act in some big way in saving them from something or delivering them from something or giving them a special event or teaching, that he would always mark it with a ritual and a day that it should be remembered every year. And so I think he's doing the same thing here. This is a great event. The Messiah has been born and is now teaching to the children of Israel. And so to mark this great event, the Lord's Supper is, of course, he hasn't developed the Lord's Supper yet. He's talking about it, oddly enough, because right now he actually establishes the Lord's Supper during his last meal, literally the day before he gets crucified, where he breaks bread at the table and passes it around and tells them all to take and eat. And I've always understood that. I know that some Christians have gone and made very deep and important doctrinal statements, or about yes, it's actually the blood, and yes, it actually turns into the flesh and whatnot. And I don't see any reason to disturb anybody's faith in that. But I just have never felt that kind of thing is necessary. It's like, why? Why? And so it's a symbol, and it's a memory mark, and it's something that's just meant to help you maintain your devotion, maintain your gratitude, by not forgetting. So that every year, just like we have Memorial Day every year to remember those who, died for us in the military. And so this is the same kind of thing. And as far as when it's done, all the Christian traditions do it a little differently. Some do it every Sunday, some do it every day, some do it only on special celebrations, you know. And so it's really it's up to your congregation who's ever doing it. But I don't think there's anything magical or otherworldly about it. I just think that Jesus is declaring a ritual to be remembered, a time to help your devotion, to feed your devotion. Does that settle with everyone? I'm not taking away from any other, if you want to believe that the cracker becomes the flesh and that the wine becomes the blood as you drink it, by all means have that faith. If you don't, by all means don't have that faith. It's not the important thing. The important thing is the fact that the incarnation bears the message that we should listen to. And if we listen to it, we will not suffer the death of the body, because we'll understand, we'll watch the body die, and we'll know that we are free from that. And so we will not suffer death. If we didn't know this, if we hadn't had the teachings of the avatars, then we would believe ourselves firmly to be the body. And when we died, we would suffer that death, because all the way until the body was gone, we would believe that it was us that was dying. And so you would suffer death. But because of your knowledge of this, you can watch the body die and know that you're not going with it. And so you don't suffer death. Right? And that's his whole point. And every avatar delivers. Every avatar is there. The avatar is there to give you a handle to hold God. Without the avatar, without God embodying herself or himself, how would we fall in love with God? It's like Holy Mother says, what you can't fall in love with a gas. you know. And so God, to those who want to know him that way, devotionally, he manifests every now and then, takes a form, and lives the closest to perfect manifestation of what divine presence is, of what divine love is, for all of us to learn from. And so he's always that pure form of God, always there to show love and compassion. And one of the most important aspects of the avatar, and it has always been, is that the avatar can remove karma or remove sin from a seeker. He can take away the obstacles that are preventing their progress, because he has no debt of his own to cover, no delusion of his own to cover. And so that's apparently where he gets that power, or she gets that power from. And so this is what the avatars have always been. They come to infuse the world with dharma and to set it in a closer to balance so that it's easier for people to realize God. And he provides that grace for unsticking us so that we're not stuck in the same ruts and the same loops as always. So, Dominique, you look like you're trying to digest that, but just not really.
I have a lingering question. I'm not quite sure how to put it together because I've heard you talk about the crucifixion before in,
Uh-huh.
in other classes that we've had. And it seems like in this passage that you read, it's kind of like alluding to the crucifixion, kind of,
It is, yeah.
without really saying it.
Yes.
But then it's like there's this part that's like the what we were just talking about right now with like the eating of the flesh and the drinking of the blood, and then mixing that concept with the crucifixion. And then I'm thinking like, well, but it's metaphorical at the same time. But then, like, why do we need the crucifixion? Does that make sense? Like, why, like, if it's metaphor, like, could Jesus, not to say he didn't have to, the crucifixion didn't have to happen, but like, would the result have been the same, or like, do we need the crucifixion? Like, do we really need the crucifixion to be saved? Like, was that the idea? Like, I don't know how to ask that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to ask a Christian, a modern Christian, they're going to say absolutely, yeah, that it was the crucifixion that set us free. Now, as a Vedantan, who understands that the incarnations have come many times before he came as Jesus, and that people have realized God throughout history, and that we've had these great saints that have ascended, throughout history. I'm going to have to say that it wasn't necessary in that sense. I'm going to say that it was done not as a necessary thing, because nothing's necessary for God. God can do anything that she wants to do. And, but I am going to say that it was necessary to paint a picture of exactly how much love there is for us.
Mhm.
And that God is demonstrating that he would never have us do more than what he is willing to do for us. And that the only way for us to see how important this is, our realization, our freedom, how important and how much he wants us to have it, I think that going to this extent is going to the maximum extent. He can't go any farther to say, look how much I want this to reach you. Look at what I am willing to do for you. Because in the Old Testament, the history of the Jews, and remember, each time Jesus comes, each time the incarnation comes, he comes to a specific place and time. And there's always a localized context to that visit that gives the Leela its plot points, as it were, right? It was gopis for Krishna, for Rama, that whole thing with Sita and all of that going on. And so there's always a local story happening through which the truths become manifest and are taught. And so with Jesus, it's the same thing. So he did, in fact, come for the Jews. And as a matter of fact, we see at the beginning here that it was exclusively for the Jews. He wouldn't even teach some of the non-Jews at some point. And so within the Jewish context, it was very necessary for him to be crucified, because he was creating a new covenant. He was creating a new contract with them. Up until that, life with God was transactional. If you sinned, if you did this sin, you had to offer two turtle doves and a bullfrog. And if you did this kind of sin, you had to offer an ox and one sheep, And so it was this constant sacrificing on your part. And then, of course, we have that famous story where Isaac God tells, is Abraham, I believe, right? Who wants his son Isaac to be sacrificed. And so, as a test to see if Abraham was willing to give up his own son for God. And so, as the story goes in the Old Testament, Abraham takes his son to the top of the mountain and is about to take the knife to him to sacrifice him. And God stops it and says, I was just testing your devotion here. He provides him with a lamb or a ram to offer instead of his son. And so I only bring that up because you can sort of see a mirror of what God requested of Abraham. And Abraham, because this is when Abraham, it's through Abraham that this whole contract was arranged. And so he asked Abraham, are you willing to give up your son for me? Abraham demonstrates that he is. God rescues his son. He doesn't have to kill him. But I kind of see that that was the formation of the contract, the lineage through which the world would be blessed. And so at this other end of the contract, now God mirrors that. He's saying, okay, now no longer do you sacrifice to me for your sin to pay for your shortcomings. Now with this new covenant, I'm giving myself to you, and I'm doing the one final sacrifice that no longer is your relationship with me transactional, but now it is covered fully in grace, and it's simply you having to accept it now. You simply have to look at me and say, I accept your gift. I want to know you. I want to know my nature. And you go forward. So in that sense, yes, the sacrifice was necessary, but it wasn't, it's not like God can't forgive sin unless, and I've been told this in seminary, and I just flat out, I cannot see it as true, that God requires blood for forgiveness. I don't think that that's the case. I think that blood and that sacrifice was always there to keep our awareness alive of our situation and our desperation and how we need to get rid of this ego, sacrifice ego, die to ourself. And so I think that all of that was there to keep us aware of the urgency and the importance of not falling into our delusion and losing hope. So all of that.
Without the crucifixion, though, there wouldn't have been a resurrection. So you kind of had to have that according to, the heart of Christian faith. The resurrection is as important as the crucifixion, that he rose from the dead, he overcame death. And the idea with baptism that you yourself get to die along with Christ and get reborn in and through Christ. So that resurrection is as important as the crucifixion. You couldn't have the one without the other. You had to die in order to resurrect, right? So
Yes. Okay.
although
No,
I'm with Dominique, I don't think it was necessary. I think I would have followed Jesus and thought it was awesome even
well,
without all
it was,
that.
that's what I'm saying. On the world scale, on the grand scale, it wasn't necessary in that sense. But like I said, each time that the incarnation comes, there's a local Leela that he's playing, and within that localized Leela, he was coming to the Jews as the Messiah, as the fulfillment of a prophecy that had already been all laid out in their scriptures. So for them and for that story to be what it was meant to be, yes, the crucifixion was necessary. And the resurrection, the necessity of the resurrection was simply to say, I am beyond all of this. Nothing has control over me, that I'm untouched by everything. And so in that sense, yes, it's important and all of that. But what I'm trying to get around is this idea that if this didn't happen, nobody could find God, which we know is not true because we've had many realized people walk the planet before the coming of Jesus. I remember I took a class on ancient Egyptian history, and we went through almost 2,000 years of Egyptian history before we even got to Moses. And so that's the one weak link that I find in this idea of any of these traditions who claim to be the only way. All of them, by the way, are latecomers to the game. The three religions that claim the exclusivity the most are the three latest religions that have come into the world. And I don't think, there's this notion of like, all you have to do is think about that. There were tens of thousands of years of history before the Christ. And if all of those people can find God without Jesus, then they'll find God without Jesus. They'll find God through Buddha, through Rama, through Krishna, through Chaitanya, through Ramakrishna, all the other ways that God has put the ladder down. And for those who are insisting on their fundamentalism and their exclusivity, that's no harm to me. I'll let them feel that way if they want to. But, to say that the billions of people that lived life before Jesus, you're either going to have to say they're all lost, which nobody's going to say that, but Jesus, the Christians have some weird little twist in their theology where they say, oh, well, it was retroactive and they got saved, retroactively. And I'm like, well, they couldn't have repented and taken the name of Christ retroactively. So you're going to basically give a free pass to everybody before Jesus, right? Because they can't have a sense of agency because they're done. And so it just doesn't make sense. And I know that that's one of the beliefs of the modern church. I don't think that this is fundamental to religion. I think that it's part and parcel of Christianity for sure, and necessary for their path because it's the source of the devotion. That you love Jesus because he gave his life for you. It's necessary for this Leela, in this context, for Jesus to be what he is and to mean what he meant. This had to happen. But to say that it's the only way gives you problems that you can't explain away, that you're going to have to come up with an answer for. And so that's kind of how I leave it, like that. And all of because the further fact is that it's not any particular traditions that are exclusive. It's always the fundamentalists of any tradition which claim exclusivity. So you've got fundamentalist Hindus, you've got people who are worshipers of Krishna who say you can't get there any other way but through Krishna. If you don't worship Krishna, bye-bye. And then you've got, it's like that for all groups. So really, I see the exclusivity as being a function of egoism. It's the ego that always sets up boundaries and feeds the sense of being, the sense of self, gives it a sense of security, gives it a sense of greatness, gives it a sense of importance. That's why we weave an ego, is to have all of that in a world where we don't have anything, where we don't know anything. So we create a story that provides us what we need for our comfort, and that's our ego. And part of that is, we because of boundary, because ego separates, then it comes up with this idea of exclusivity. And boy, you can't get a bigger ego trip than to just believe somehow you were lucky enough to be born into the only real religion. It's like, I got in trouble actually when I was a youth minister because I got up in front of my class one day and I taught them wrong things on purpose, because I told them, I said, in this class that I'm going to do today, if you're going to disagree with me, you have to tell me why. You have to be able to show me in the Bible why you disagree with me. So I taught a whole bunch of wrong things that day. And when the kids all got mad and were like, no, it's not, it doesn't say that. And I said, well, then show me. And none of them could show me, and I gave them, I railed on them. I said, you walk around, saying that you know the truth, saying that this is the only way. And I says, and yet you don't know any of it yourself. I said, for you to think that you have somehow been born into the right religion without having studied even that religion, and certainly no other religion, that's just ignorance. That's just ignorance. It's like, you need to know what you're talking about. You can't hold on to a bunch of ideas and adopt a philosophy as being the only true one that you're going to hold everyone in the world accountable to without knowing it yourself. It's like, you can't do that. That's not the way life works, right? And so that's the whole thing. It's not necessary. The exclusivity, what would be the point of it? Why would God need exclusivity? Why would he say, when I come this time this way, this is the only one that's important? Forget all the other times that I've come, and forget all the other people who have been enlightened and have served humanity and given themselves over. Forget the other avatars that have died and risen from the dead. There's at least 3 of them out there that I've heard of over the years. You know, the rising from the dead is not a big deal if you look at the world's traditions. Having a virgin birth is not unique to Christianity if you look at the world's traditions. You know, so all of these things like, oh, well, nobody has died and raised from the dead. Oh, it's like, well, see, that's why you need to study, because yes, they actually have. You know, it's like, oh, nobody else has had the virgin birth, you know, where God is the Father. And I was like, well, that's why you need to study, because, well, yes, as a matter of fact, Ramakrishna's story, even, you know, he was a virgin birth. I don't know that his wife, mother was a virgin, but his birth did not involve his dad, right? He was impregnated by the light of the temple that came out on her that day. So anyway, that's another conversation. Why is it always the man that's optional? I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. All right. Let's read another little section here. After that, Jesus went about in Galilee, for he did not wish to go about in Judea, because the Jews were seeking to kill him. Now the festival of the Jews, which is the feast of the tabernacles, was at hand. And his brothers said to him, "Remove from here and go to Judea, so that your disciples also can see the works that you perform. For no one acts in secret and then hopes to be well known. If you are doing these things, show yourself to the world." For even his brothers did not believe in him. And Jesus said to them, "My time has not yet come, but your time is always ready at hand. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me, because I testify concerning it, that what it does is wicked. You go up to the festival. I will not yet go up to this festival, because my time is not yet completed." He told them this and remained in Galilee. But when his brothers went up to the festival, then he went too, not openly, but in secret. So then the Jews looked at him from the festival and said, "Where is he?" And there was so much murmuring about him in the crowds. Some said, "He is good," and others says, "No, he leads people astray." But none spoke openly about him through fear of the Jews. And now the festival had gone halfway, and Jesus went up to the temple and taught. And the Jews were astonished and said, "How does this man have learning when he was never a student?" Jesus answered them and said, "My teaching is not my own, but it is his who sent me. If anyone wishes to do his will, he will know about the teaching, whether it comes from God or whether I speak it on my own account. He who speaks on his own account is looking for his own glory, but he who looks for the glory of him who sent him is the true man, and there is no wrong in him. Did not Moses give you the law? And not one of you obeys the law. Why are you trying to kill me?" The crowd answered, "You are possessed. Who is trying to kill you?" Jesus answered and said to them, "I did one thing, and you are all astonished. This was why Moses gave you circumcision, not that it comes from Moses, but from the fathers. And you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. If a man receives circumcision on the Sabbath, so that the law of Moses may not be broken, are you angry with me because I made a whole man healthy on the Sabbath? Do not judge by appearance, but make the judgment that is just." Then some people of Jerusalem said, "Is not this the man they are trying to kill? And see, he speaks in public, and they say nothing to him. Might it be that the authorities have seen that this is the Christ? But we know where this man comes from. But when the Christ comes, no one will know where he comes from." Jesus cried aloud as he taught in the temple, "You know me, and you know where I come from. But I came not on my own accord. But he is the true one who has sent me. And you do not know him. I know him because I am from him, and it was he who sent me." Then they sought to seize him, but no one laid a hand on him because his time had not yet come. Many in the crowd believed in him and said, When the Christ comes, can he perform more miracles than this one has done?" The Pharisees heard the crowd murmuring thus about him, and the high priests and the Pharisees sent officers to seize him. But then Jesus said, "For a little more time I am with you, and then I go to him who sent me. You will look for me, and you will not find me, and where I am you cannot go." Then the Jews said among themselves, "Where does this man mean to go, where we shall not find him? He cannot be going to go where we settled among the Greeks and teach the Greeks. What is it that he said? 'You will look for me and you will not find me, and where I am you cannot go'?" On the last great day of the festival, Jesus stood forth and made a declaration, saying, "If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. For one who believes in me, as the scripture said, streams of living water shall flow from deep within him." This he said concerning the Spirit, of which he had put their faith in him would get. But the Spirit was not yet, because Jesus was not yet glorified. And some in the crowd who listened to these words said, "This is in truth the prophet." And others said, "This is the Christ." But others said, "Surely the Christ cannot come out of Galilee. Did not the scripture say that the Christ would be the seed of David, and from Bethlehem, David's village?" So there was division in the multitude over him, and some of them wished to seize him, but no one laid hands on him. Then the officers came back to the high priest and the Pharisees, who said to them, "Why did you not bring him?" The officers answered, "Never has a man spoken like that." The Pharisees answered, "Surely you have not been led astray. Do you think that one of the council or of the Pharisees believes in him? Only this rabble which does not know the law and is accursed." Nicodemus, who had gone to Jesus before, who was one of them, said to them, "Surely our law does not judge a man without first giving him a hearing and being told what he does." They answered and said to him, "Could it be that you are from Galilee too? Study the matter, and you know that no prophet originates in Galilee." And they went away, each to his own house. You see a lot of wrestling going on around him and his message and who he is and what he's doing and why he's doing it. And you see that it's again, just like with Buddha, it's the spiritual elite that are trying to do away with him. You know, we'll stop there for today. Let me stop the recording.